welcome, Mr. Ryan.
Well, thanks for having me.
First question, our viewers want to know, what is a social enterprise?
Well, it's an enterprise like any other, and a social entrepreneur is an entrepreneur like any other, with one very fundamental difference, and that is that the primary return for a social enterprise or for a social entrepreneur is a social return. The goal is to essentially focus on the good that is not otherwise being provided, and to earn a financial return in order to be able to achieve that goal and to be able to expand your enterprise. But I come back to it. The prime goal for a social enterprise has to be a social return. Well, but that fundamentally you're filling a role that benefits society that would not otherwise be filled unless you were doing it in that way. So, for the sake of discussion, somebody who was to employ people with disabilities who would not be employed, somebody who was going to employ street kids who would not otherwise be employed, and they may well be accomplishing their financial goals may be achieved in that. But the fact is that if, for instance, you're training those street kids, or if the people with disabilities are really being given a leg up which they otherwise would not give, well, that imposes an overhead burden on that particular enterprise. That's what reduces your financial return, and that's what enhances your social return.
Makes a lot of sense. You recently were on a task force in Toronto, first Canadian task force on social finance. What was the end goal of that, and why was that started?
Well, first of all, the charitable organizations in Canada and charitable activity in Canada plays a much greater role here than it does in most other countries. Major employers were very, very successful. But in the field of social enterprise, we're laggards. The United States are ahead of us, and I think we're not used to that in terms of social responsibility. The United Kingdom are probably the world leaders. But other countries, such as Korea, where I've just come back, I mean, Korea is a major player in the whole field of social enterprise, and it makes no sense that this area, which can do so much good, especially in a time of government tightness, should be constantly fighting for its position in Canada. And so the goal of the task force was to lay out in front of Canadians and in front of governments, essentially a paradigm that would allow social enterprise to flourish.
So before this, there was no such roadmap, if you will, about social enterprise, social entrepreneurship in Canada?
You know, the fact is that there are probably as many definitions of social enterprise as there are social entrepreneurs. There's a lot of work that has been done, but there's no body of thought that is accepted right across the country as more or less the Bible. And the view was, let's come up with that, so that in fact we get away from this fight over definitions. We get away with all of the peripheral fights, and we can get really down to brass tacks. Let's make it happen.
Right. So with regards to Let's Make It Happen, there were 7 recommendations that came from this report, which we found online. What was the 7 recommendations supposed to do, and who was supposed to be listening to that? Well,
essentially, I think you can summarize the recommendations by saying that there has to be a regulatory basis, which is acceptable by governments and by charities and by foundations.
Right. Because right now, currently, there is none.
There is none, and then there have to be financial incentives, the same way as small business in Canada has financial incentives. And so there's got to be that recognition of the legitimacy by governments. Otherwise, foundations are going to have trouble, corporations are going to have trouble doing what really has to be done. So who is the audience? Well, the audience certainly is governments.
Right.
It's also Canadians. It's foundations. It's everybody who really is part and parcel of our society.
With regards to individuals that are looking to start up social enterprises, investors who are looking for alternative financial instruments to invest into, what do you say to them now that we have this roadmap? We know what type of investments that we should be investing in. We know that E&P, enterprise not-for-profits, is out there pitching and training not-for-profits to deal with the technical side of developing a business for not-for-profit. The landscape is there, the roadmap is set. What do we say to investors?
We say to them, invest. I mean, fundamentally, that's what this is all about. I think I think one can argue this really from two bases. I think to the straight investor, I think that you can really say, look, social enterprise is longer-term investment.
Like 10, 20 years maybe?
Well, it could be, or it could be less than that, but it's certainly not a quick flip.
Right.
So I think what you're saying to many people, such as pension funds or insurance companies, who are looking for, in fact, long-term returns to match their liabilities, look, social enterprise will provide you with that.
Right.
And in fact, if you take a look at your investment returns over the last 3 or 4 years, probably social enterprise you'll do very well by social enterprise under those circumstances. But the other way of looking at it as well is to say that there has been a fundamental shift in the way monies are provided for a lot of socially responsible ventures. When Carnegie made all his money and then didn't give it away until he was on his deathbed.
Right. Yeah.
We're now seeing people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, who have made massive amounts of money, and then now during their lifetime they want to see it. They want to see it given. But there's another class. There's a whole wide range of people, younger people who want to invest, want to get a return, but they want to do good with their money. They recognize that they've done fairly well, and they want to do something. Or there are people who just are bound and determined they're going to help. Well, there's got to be a way in which they can participate, and a lot of those people cannot do so unless they get a return.
Right.
And then I think probably I said 2 ways. There's a third way as well, and that third way is there is more money available in capital markets than there is available in all of the foundations and all of the government grants possible. And it would take a very small percentage of that money to do a massive amount of good. And I believe that you can tap those capital markets, providing you really do follow essentially the recommendations that are set out in the task force report, and you can satisfy the investors, and you can do an enormous amount of social good.
Well, I'm sold. I don't know about you guys. I want to thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. And have a safe trip back to
Okay.
Ottawa.